I've been in tech, like you said, forever. I've been running big software companies. And one of the things you learn when you're running a software company, like any business, doesn't matter how cool something is. If you can't solve someone's problem well enough that they'll pay you for it, it doesn't matter, right? So AI's been around since the 50s. And it's just a fancy way of saying, can we get machines to think? In late 22, OpenAI came out with ChatGPT.
Yep.
That was the first generative AI model that everybody noticed in the regular world.
What is the biggest AI myth you wish people would simply stop believing?
My business is going to be taken over by our advanced cyber overlords? No.
So is there something in technology with AI that keeps you up at night?
Sure.
In life, there's a blueprint for everything. There's no need to start over. Hear from industry leaders, those at the top of their fitness journey, and real estate gurus. They tell you exactly how they did it. All you have to do is listen, learn, and execute. This is The Blueprint with Brad Rice.
All right, guys, here we are back at another edition of The Blueprint. I got to tell you guys, I am so excited, like a little kid in a candy shop, about our guest today and about the subject. We're going to bring the heat today. I'm telling you, you are in for a great show. Today, I have Pete Lunenfeld, and he is the founder, CEO, and CTO, you probably have a few other titles, of CurrentWave AI. So we're going to talk about a lot of things artificial intelligence today. CurrentWave is a SaaS company that's building AI-powered software that helps businesses conquer knowledge management. So we're going to learn a bit about that. But Pete has over 30 years of experience in tech and has led startups and enterprise teams. In fact, he had a very large team at his previous company of over 350 engineers that he managed, and that was at the truck stop. Truckstop.com. Anyhow, look, today we're going to cover a lot of things that are happening in AI that are transformative and that businesses should be aware of. So welcome, Pete. I'm excited to get started with you.
Thank you, Brad. I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So little side note. So, normally you guys watch a show and you see that I give a little gift to my guests, a little coffee mug and, just some things that you can remember and a hat. Well, Pete brought me a gift today. So my assistant who helps them out when they come in, she comes up to me and she goes, "Brad, Pete's such a nice guy." And by the way, it's our first time meeting in person. So let's get rolling. Look, there's a lot to dive into. We don't want to be here overnight, so let's just do it.
You bet.
So first of all, I want to know how you are improving knowledge management for businesses. Like, what does your company do?
Yeah, so this is kind of one of those wild things, and I'll kind of tell you how I got here. So I've been in tech, like you said, forever. I've been running big software companies forever. And one of the things you learn when you're running a software company, like any business, doesn't matter how cool something is. If you can't solve someone's problem well enough that they'll pay you for it, it doesn't matter, right? So when generative AI came up, and we can talk about maybe what that means later.
Maybe can you define that? What is generative AI?
Okay, so we have to split generative AI away from AI. AI has been around since the 50s, and it's just a fancy way of saying, can we get machines to think? Instead of what you're used to with a computer program like Excel, where you put 2 and 2, you get 4. It's what we call procedural. There's no thinking. It's just actions that are in a row. Okay. So AI, for the last 10 years, has been what we called machine learning. If you've ever got a fraud alert on your credit card, that's what that is. So machine learning was taking huge amounts of data, like credit card transactions, and trying to find the pattern of why is this one fraudulent? And the machine may have figured out, if you have a bunch of Simi Valley transactions and all of a sudden a Fontana transaction, maybe that's weird.
Okay.
Right? So we've been in that AI world for a decade or so, and everyone's not really noticed, right? So in late 22, OpenAI came out with ChatGPT.
Yep.
So That was the first generative AI model that everybody noticed in the regular world, right? So generative AI is a really fancy way of describing prediction by a computer of language. What do I mean by that? So if we were to play a game and I was to say, I'm going to lunch to have a, what would you predict the next word is?
Okay, so so to have a bite to eat,
Right.
or to have a hamburger.
Right. So
Right.
now if I say I'm going to a restaurant for breakfast at McDonald's to have a
Egg McMuffin.
done.
Right.
So if we were to look at the math behind that, the first time I gave you a sentence and asked you to fill it out, there was a zillion things you could have said. You could have said, go to a restaurant and have
example.
steak, Jamba Juice, Subway sandwich, doesn't matter, right? But the more I give you, the closer you're going to get statistically to the answer I think you are going to give
Yeah.
me, right? So now imagine that with the ability to predict the next word when I just trained you by
Yeah.
giving you two sentences.
Yeah.
Now let's say we train a computer to do that with every piece of written text on the internet. That's every book, every website, every magazine, every textbook, every Reddit article ever.
Every interview, everything.
So when you hear about people saying, hey, OpenAI just finished training a new model and it took them 6 months and $300 million,
Yeah.
what they mean is they gobbled up all of this text off the internet mostly, books, magazines, articles, and they started telling the computer, I'm going, take a sentence, I'm going to a restaurant to, and it literally calculates the percentage of what's the chance it's burger, what's the chance is it steak, what's the chance is it omelet. Now, once that training is done, and by the way, for the aficionados out there, I am way oversimplifying.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
All right. But once you've got that training done, the AI, the model, has, in essence, a giant table of all the words and what the next word probably is. So now I use ChatGPT and I say, how do I make sourdough bread? Well, ChatGPT has been fed probably every sourdough bread recipe ever made. So it knows the next word after how do I make sourdough bread is start with flour. And once it has start with flour, it knows the next probability-based word is and water. And the next probability, and so you see where I'm going with this. It's just this chain.
Got it.
So all generative AI is a giant language predictive engine.
model.
Right, except on steroids to the fact that nobody understood.
Sure.
So we've all been watching generative AI happen for the last 5-6 years, and it was cool. It was cute. It was like, oh, I have my cell phone, and I'm starting to type a text, and it kind of guesses the
finishes
next
it.
word. And we all know how that worked. Nobody, including OpenAI, really predicted how magical it would be if you got everything. Every language, every piece of text ever. And so my point is nobody thought it would be intelligent. And maybe in hindsight, it should have been. Like, how do we teach our human babies to be smart?
Right.
Language.
Yep.
It's this like unlock
Yeah.
into comparing abstract ideas into the real world.
Yeah.
And with generative AI models, ChatGPT being the big one, it's going to be the Frisbee.
Right. Of course.
Like,
Yeah.
And the Kleenex.
The Kleenex of facial tissue.
Right.
The Q-tips of ear swabs.
Correct. And at the base of it, it's called a transformer model, which we don't have to get into. It's the tech behind how this works. How do you figure out the next word?
Yeah.
But really, it's all it is.
Okay. That's a really good explanation. I appreciate that. I'm thinking back to when you started this sentence and you said AI has been around for decades. And I remember, and I'm wondering if you remember, this little electronic game that was called 23 Questions. Oh, my goodness. See if you can find that. There's probably, try Amazon first. There's probably some new ones of it. May not be the oldest model, but eBay would have it. Look up 23 Questions game. So while he's doing that, No, it's electronic game. You might have to put electronic or something. While he's trying to find it. So I remember this distinctly. In fact, I probably have this somewhere in my house because I played it with my kids. It would ask you questions and you would answer, and you would think of something, and so it would say come up with a whatever, and then it would say like, is it a person, is it a place, is it this, and it would ask a question, right? And then you answer that. And it basically said you win if it doesn't guess within 23 questions. And it almost always got it. And you could come up with the most abstract thing. Yep, there it is. That round one there, the purple one. There it is. That's the one we had. Yeah.
But
20 questions. Oh, I remembered it as 23.
But
it's even better.
Your example is exactly right. If we think of the dictionary, how many words are in the dictionary? Tens of thousands. And then you say, just give me ones that start with R.
Yeah.
It shortens.
It shortens.
Just give me ones that are nouns.
And it keeps narrowing it and narrowing it.
You do that, not
That's
even
your
20 times.
questions.
Now imagine that with essentially supercomputers doing the math.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just doing that. So if I have 3 words, the 4th word is that.
That's right.
The 5th word is that again. And they call it a recursive model.
Yeah.
It basically recalculates word by word by word.
No, when you did this explanation, I immediately thought, well, that's how they did it, right? And so it has been around for decades, but now obviously a lot different. So that's a great explanation of generative AI. So what I'd like to do also is explore with you things that are happening right now today in the computing market. So there was an announcement recently by NVIDIA that they had this thing called the Jetson Orin Nano for home computing. So it's nano computing for home that they're selling for $249. And I'm just wondering what that means for AI, like specifically in your home. Like, what does that mean?
It's a tricky one to answer. Give me a second to back up.
Okay.
So we talked about how OpenAI trained ChatGPT. Nobody really knows, but we think it was over maybe like 1 trillion pieces of text.
Okay.
And it took months, and it took hundreds of millions of dollars. Why did it take so long, and why was it so expensive? Because the machine literally has to calculate the probability of every possible word against every possible word ever. And you start from the first article, and you work your way down, right? Super expensive. The faster the chips are, the faster that happens, and the cheaper it gets.
Yeah.
Okay, so we really, when we talk about AI, again, for the aficionados, I'm going to be oversimplifying. We have the cost to train the models. So these big AI labs, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, Anthropic, Mistral, now DeepSeek has entered the fray.
Yeah.
Okay. They're spending huge amounts of dollars on compute, which is just a fancy way of saying the chips that do the cranking,
Okay.
to train the models. That's what's expensive. Okay. Big clusters. Like I think Google and Elon with X are currently building the 2 biggest data centers that will ever have been on the earth right now to train models.
Where is that happening?
I think, I don't know where Google's is. Elon's is in Memphis.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Like he's literally building a natural gas power plant for this data center.
Now these have to be like hyper cooled, right?
Hyper powered. So these big chips. So we talk about NVIDIA. So let's talk about NVIDIA's enterprise class chips.
Okay.
H100s. You probably heard these things thrown around. They take unbelievable amounts of power, but what you get out of it is so worth it that folks are investing in not only the chips themselves, but the power to drive them.
Okay.
And then the cooling is just like silly as well.
Yeah, it's like has to be at like 0 or 0 degrees or something like that.
No, it's not quite like the quantum computing stuff. This is more like the computer in your workstation.
Oh, okay.
Just times 10.
Okay, so it's the quantum computing
That has to be
in
at
these
absolute
hypercooled
zero.
spaces.
Yeah, different animals.
Got it.
But let's go back to your nano. So that nano, you're not going to train what we call a frontier leading edge model on your laptop. You're just not. But then we have the second side of the equation, which is when you go to ChatGPT or Google Gemini or Claude and you type, how do I make sourdough bread? You have to now do heavy computing on the backside to read the model. But now those prediction things, even though we have the giant table of where things match up, you still got to run it. The math still has to happen. That's what we call inference.
Got it.
So we have training costs and inference costs. So right now, like for my company, I purchase inference from one of the big cloud providers. I currently use Microsoft Azure, but it could be Google, it could be Amazon, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Because I don't have the wherewithal to go buy a data center. They do. Okay. The idea of the Nano is you can start running inference locally on your own.
That's a big deal.
Workstation. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
Now, are you going to do ChatGPT level stuff on your workstation? No, not for a while anyway. But now you're going to be able to do some what they'd call small workloads on your laptop. And that's a huge deal for cost because you're not now paying your however many cents per round to OpenAI or Google or Microsoft. But you also now can do it securely. So one of the problems that AI has is to get the benefit of AI, most people have to go buy it from someone.
Yeah.
You have to rent it. Now, these guys work really hard to make it secure, but you're still given the keys to the kingdom.
That's right.
Outside your walls, right?
Yeah.
So if you can run it on your workstation, all of a sudden it doesn't have to go anywhere but yours. So think of anything from like investment analysis or any kind of trade secret that you want to run.
Yeah.
Now you can start doing this and not be $100 million corporation to pull it off.
That's a really good point. What does this mean? You bring up investment analysis. I had read just the other day that somebody created an AI model for investing when to buy and sell stocks. And I thought about that and I thought, man, you couple that with, and I can't think of the name for it, but the, millisecond trading process that, these guys are doing.
Which is not new, right?
Yeah, that's not new. But now you add, it's not a human element analyzing things or finding out things. It says AI doing it at a hyper speed. That's a game changer for stocks, isn't it?
All right, I'm going to get into like deep opinion. All right, so anybody listening, do not go spend your money on what I'm about to say. So my opinion is, do you remember what they used to say about like the internet? All the good technology was really started by the folks in the adult entertainment industry. Yeah. Because that's what all the people, even no one talked about it, that's what was, like we have streaming video because of those folks.
Yeah.
All right, so what's been driving AI for a while now is the investment folks.
Yeah.
All under the covers. Nobody talks about it because it's super proprietary. Because if you solve the stock market, you print money.
That's right.
Now, I want you to be aware of something. Nobody has solved it.
Yeah, yet.
Right. Yet, or this is my deep opinion, I think ever. I think that may not be a solvable problem, at least for a while. And the reason I say that is because if it was solved, we would know.
Yeah.
Right. Elon's got a lot of money. He still has to work for it. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to make a big, giant but. DeepSeek made all the news a couple of weeks ago. A Chinese, we'll back into this a little bit. Chinese startup nobody had heard of.
Yep.
Released a model from China that rivaled the Google and OpenAI models and the Anthropic models, and nobody had even heard of them before. People lost their mind. And I mean, the market lost its mind. If you remember, this is just a couple of weeks ago, like the NVIDIA stock just cratered. All these other tech company stock prices cratered overnight. Now, we can talk about this in a minute. That was ridiculously a bad thing to do. If you sold all that stock, you were making a huge mistake.
Right.
But why did they do it? Because it looked for a minute like maybe DeepSeek had cracked a code nobody else had cracked. And the big thing was they did it in China where these super fancy chips are not allowed to be sold. So they created a model that was just as good as the big boys here in the US and did it without the fancy toys and did it essentially underground. Now, here's the part most people don't know. DeepSeek is wholly owned by one of the big Chinese hedge funds.
Okay.
They were not.
It ties right into.
They were not new to the party, man.
Yeah.
This was not like a bunch of college kids going, "Oh, I think we can do a AI better than ChatGPT." These guys have been working on this problem for years, if not decades, to solve the investment thing.
Yeah.
And they led themselves to, hey, we think we've now solved some problems other people haven't solved. Now, let's get to the reality check with DeepSeek for those of you guys who want to talk about it. It is a really cool step forward. It's real, right?
Yeah.
It's not smoke and mirrors. It is not the step forward people would have led you to believe that day that it got announced,
Sure.
I think just after Christmas. People were talking like, oh, the game over, everyone. No.
Got it.
But they did do some cool stuff. And what they did, like so many stories in history, they had less to work with. They didn't have the good toys.
Yeah.
They didn't have all the brains that are in Silicon Valley. So they figured out new ways to get it done because they had to. Necessity, the mother of
I haven't
invention.
seen, other than hearing in the news, I haven't seen DeepSeek. Is it very similar to ChatGPT in that the way you interface with it and you ask questions and you collaborate with it and all that?
Kind of. So the ChatGPT everyone's used to uses a certain kind of model. There's new ChatGPTs. The models are called reasoning models.
Yeah.
So if I go to ChatGPT, you have my free copy. I say, how do I make a sourdough bread recipe? It starts answering.
Sure.
Right? What it doesn't do is think very long. It basically, as quick as it can calculate those predictions, it just streams an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes those answers don't make sense. In AI land, we call that hallucination.
Okay.
Meaning the AI will make something up whether it's right or not. So people started working on this problem, including the big frontier labs like OpenAI, and said, well, what if we could make the AI give answers and then pause and reflect on its own answer and answer some more and reflect on it? This is how people work. Like,
Sure.
if I have an idea, I'll take a yellow pad and I'll start writing, and then I'll read back and I'm like, that's no good.
Right.
And then I'll start over, and by the time I'm done, I got a pretty good idea.
Mm-hmm.
AI was always, it would just use whatever it wrote down first. It was literally unable to backtrack.
Okay.
So OpenAI came out with something called GPT-01. Now we're up to 03. And they're called reasoning models. So they're slow. So for the average user looking up, who won the World Series in 1961, it's dumb. It's super expensive. It's slow. But if you're doing something like, I need you to take this textbook and compare it to this other textbook and tell me where they're different.
Mm-hmm.
You need this slowed down, more thoughtful thing. So
Got it.
we call them reasoning models.
Mm-hmm.
DeepSeek is a reasoning model.
Got it.
And this was the cutting edge, as of like a month or two ago, right? So they caught OpenAI at their own game kind of out of nowhere. But not really out of nowhere, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, behind the scenes. What's the difference between Claude and ChatGPT, and why would one be better than the other?
I'd say if you're considering joining the AmeriFund team, it's a really good idea.
We as processors at AmeriFund Home Loans support the loan officers in every aspect of the loan once it comes into processing, because we want them out there marketing themselves and originating more loans and supporting more borrowers.
Competitive commission plans are a given, and powerful technology is expected, but what truly sets us apart is our culture. We've built a solid support system for our loan officers.
If you're interested in joining the AmeriFund team, go to amerifund.com/careers.
Different flavors of ice cream. So the folks who started Anthropic, who create Claude, were OpenAI people that left, right? So they all come from the same gene pool of this early research in transformers, which was the breakthrough that gave us generative AI. Anthropic has a really cool mission statement, depending on your point of view. They're all about what they call safety. They want to create an AI that when it does one day maybe become super intelligent, is not going to murder us all. Their snap over to OpenAI is OpenAI does not care.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure OpenAI would differ, but Claude has a different flavor. Like it's the same tech under the hood, essentially.
The same like the way you interface with it is similar?
It's like not similar, it's identical.
Okay.
Now, it's like if you and I both went and built a house, we're going to both use timber and have a foundation and have plumbing and electrical and a roof, because that's what houses are. But your house may look totally different than my house. So that's what I mean by flavor. So if you ask both AIs a factual question, who won the 1961 World Series, they're both going to say the Yankees.
Got it.
If you say, help me write a song about heartache, you're going to get completely different answers because the flavors are different. The models have been trained differently. They have used different algorithms. Now, what do guys like me in the AI game do? I use them all because sometimes you just need to, I need to get multiple opinions, if you will.
So is it a way to look at it is you've got 2 or 3 or 4 different advisors, and you're going to these advisors and you're asking questions, and then you're compiling the answers to these questions and deciding what's best for you?
Right. And let's keep that analogy going. If you had 4 advisors, you wouldn't ask all 4 of them who won the World Series because there's no diversity of opinion there. They're both
There's
gonna go
not a
look at
factual answer.
Right.
It's an opinion.
But when there's an opinion, that's really smart.
Yeah.
And there's even a branch of AI where they're making models. It's actually called a mixture of experts. So they have mini AI models in their big AI model.
And it analyzes all of them. So that's interesting. So I'm gonna kind of compare that to real estate.
Yeah.
So in real estate, we've got these what we call AVMs, automated valuation models.
Okay.
And so one of those that you may have heard of is called a Zestimate. That's their own model on figuring out what the value of a property is. But there's 50 of these models out there. Title companies have them, other companies have them, and Redfin has their own, and all of that. And so there are also models that'll take 3 or 4 of them and then give you kind of a weighted average result. And so very similar in using AI. It was interesting. I saw a video the other day of somebody setting their phone that had AI, it was a language AI, was able to speak, next to a different AI model on their computer, and the first one was prompted to ask a question. The second one would answer it. The computer would answer it. Then the phone, they went back and forth a couple times, and then the phone said, "I'm actually an AI agent." And the computer said, "Well, I'm an AI agent too. Should we speak in gibberlink?" And the entire conversation changed to, I had never seen or heard of this before, something called gibberlink, which is computer talking like C3PO, and they were communicating together.
Okay. So even as an AI guy, I had never heard gibberlink before. However, what you just described is a thing. So you just taught me that that's what that's called. So what has happened in the last 90 days? So if you'd have asked me 6 months ago, and remember, I'm the AI guy, right? What do you think, Pete, about the chances that AI with voice, with speech, is going to be indistinguishable from people? I'd say, we're 5 years out. Because if you've ever seen like AI generate video, it's amazing until you look at it for about 3 seconds and you're like, oh, I can totally tell. And voice was the same way. It was good, but the difference between good and indistinguishable is massive. Except in about 90 days ago, they cracked it.
Yeah.
Okay. So like my company does some work where we'll make outbound phone calls that used to be people to look up random things. Like let's say you, here's a real example. You have a company and you can't pay an invoice if something is unreadable on the invoice.
Yeah.
So you pay your clerk to call the original company and say, hey, can you send me an updated invoice?
Yeah.
We can train an AI model to make that phone call. And if you wanted to, I could show you, it is indistinguishable. I can have a conversation with my AI agent. I can change the subject. I can go left, right, and center, and the AI has no problem tracking. Except what's going to happen. And you just predicted it, right?
Yeah.
Just going right into your lap here. So if I'm creating AI that makes the call, we're also making AI that's going to get the call.
Yeah.
And you're right. There's going to be a point
more
where
efficient language for them.
The AIs don't need to speak English anymore, and they can just yak it
So
up.
is it scary that computers have their own language and can communicate with each other using that language, and we don't even know what they're saying?
Yes. Now, in a way, has that been happening for a long time? You're old enough to remember early internet with the modem. Wheelie, wheelie, wheelie,
Yeah.
wheelie. It's the same. Right?
Okay.
So scary in that it feels weird because it looks indecipherable. but it's not really.
So
not.
is there something in technology with AI that keeps you up at night? Are you a tech investor looking to shape the future of real estate? HomePie is the #1 for sale by owner marketplace, and we are revolutionizing the way homes are bought and sold. I'd love to hear from you. Just email invest@homepie.com and let's chat. Now back to the show.
Sure. And you can break this into the existential fear, like we're all going to die fear. We talk about generative AI. You've used this term a couple times. These are language models.
Yeah.
So we call them language models because they're not the Zestimate score. Zestimate, that's not a language model. That's a numbers model.
Mm-hmm.
All AI up until generative were numbers models, right? When language models came out, like I said, it was this big aha moment that, oh my gosh, we've been spending decades trying to make it be math.
Mm-hmm.
Who knew that words were really a better way to be intelligent? So what's happened already is computers already are better at language than most humans. And think of history. What starts wars?
Language.
It's not a gunshot.
Yeah.
It's a guy on a podium shouting at his people to say, listen to me, we got to do something, and we got to do it now. Think of how relationships are formed. How do you end up getting married?
You persuade them using language.
It's language. So all of the good things and the bad things that humans do, you can kind of boil down to language. It's our operating system.
Mm-hmm.
And what do we do when our operating system is now hackable by a machine? So if you get really crazy, you say one day the machines are going to use this against us, if you're taking the Terminator view, okay? It's crazy, but it's not that crazy.
No.
But what's completely going to happen, and is happening already, is other humans are going to use the machines to take advantage of other humans. Now, this is not new. People have had propaganda for hundreds of years.
In politics.
Except now, it's not only going to be indistinguishable from... So I really like Brad. I appreciate your opinion. I watch your content because I respect your thinking and your guests and who you bring on. If I can no longer tell what's Brad and what's not, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
And we're there.
Yeah.
And we're there. So this keeps me up at night. Like I have parents in their 80s. They've already, like so many people we know, have been, taken advantage of by some phone call saying, oh, you have a virus on your computer. Give me your credit card and your social security number and I'll fix it. That's teenagers in South Korea, right? Or the Ukraine taking advantage. You still have to have the human and you have to train them to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Now we have a machine that's going to be a better bad guy, and you can make 1 million phone calls a second.
Yeah. Flawless.
That scares me.
Okay. All right. Yep. That scares me too. Is there anything else that scares you about AI?
I feel like I used to always feel bad for doctors, right? Because you go to medical school, you graduate in whatever, 1998, and by 2020, everything you learned is essentially out of date.
Yeah.
The arm bone's still connected to the shoulder bone. But past that, everything changes, and they're always having to go back to school, or they're irrelevant. Technology now is changing weekly.
Yeah.
So from just a business technology point of view, I used to love waking up in the morning and before I started my workday, read through the tech news, see what new advancements are happening. Now I hate it because it's the old, now what?
Yeah.
Because when DeepSeek came out a couple weeks ago, it changed everything. Now, did it really? No, but you had to work to figure that out.
Yeah. If you're a business owner, how do you decide how to get started in AI?
It's a great question, and it's got a great answer if you can hang with me for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
Because the good news is, from a business point of view, deciding when, if, and how to implement AI, that framework already exists because we've been doing this with new technology for decades, right? The first time PCs came out, like I'm old enough, God help me, that when I graduated from college, got my very first job, they sat me at a desk. There was not a single computer in the office.
Yeah.
And when they bought the first one, the boss dropped it on my desk because I simply was the youngest one there and said, Pete, figure this out.
Yeah.
Right? So that wasn't that long ago that the PC was something new that people had to contend with. That my old boss's partner was like, we don't need that.
Yeah.
We've been doing just fine without a computer, right? Then came cloud computing.
Mm-hmm.
Then came object-oriented programming. Oh, it's actually backwards. Then came blockchain. I have a separate bone to pick about blockchain. We'll get to that later. And now AI. So really, if you're a tech leader or really a business leader, entrepreneur, business owner, doesn't matter. You got 4 things you need to evaluate anytime anything new happens. And it doesn't have to be computer new. It could be a new technology. It could be electric vehicles. It could be anything.
Yeah.
So the first step you always have is it vaporware? Right? Do you remember cold fusion when it came out?
Mm-hmm.
It took everyone a little bit to figure out this is total horse crap, right? There's nothing here. So we always have to do that first because otherwise we chase our tail for something that's not real. The good news in today's world is that gets smoked out pretty quickly.
Okay.
And if you see people who you respect and you know are no nonsense and they're starting to get behind something, that's usually a good signal, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is, does this thing, whatever the new tech is, we'll use AI, does it solve a problem I actually have? Most people trip over their shoelaces here. Think of blockchain. Blockchain's really cool. Like as a technologist, when blockchain came out, I was infatuated, as were many other people. Except the problem was, it didn't solve any issue I actually had.
Well, there are definitely things that blockchain could solve for, 100%.
But most companies don't have them.
Most companies don't, but most people could use it. And I'll explain when I'll tie it to real estate. Unfortunately, the data integrity isn't enough. There isn't enough of it there to connect everything. But if you have a dense metropolitan area where you've got an efficient recorder's office, it could be very useful. You sell your home, you've got to get title insurance, right? Because that person buying it needs to know that there's good title, that they're going to receive good title to that property. So they have to go and they have to do the research and check that you signed this and that's your deed. And then they have to pass it along here and there was no break in between or claim to the property to pass it along. And they're ensuring you're getting good title. If that all sits on the blockchain, you no longer need title insurance.
Because you have the immutable ledger.
That's right.
And that's great. What I saw as a technologist a couple years ago is florists trying to implement blockchain.
Well, yeah, things like that. But there are definitely things that are out there, the transfer of wealth, the ability for people not to steal money out of your account, all those sorts of things. In the financial world, I think blockchain really has a lot there. There's one thing I wanted to bring up because this is something I have not looked up. And Chris, I wonder if you can help us with this. So, and I forget what they call them, but we've gone through several different age cycles, right? We had the industrial age, the mechanical age, the computer age. I wonder if you could look up what those ages were, Sean, and let's look at the time frames, because what we're experiencing now is a real acceleration of an age, right? And
you mean like the agricultural age was like centuries or thousands of years, right?
Yeah,
and the Industrial Revolution was hundreds of years.
Correct.
And then the modern, and then now the AI age, right?
That's right. So look at how should we look this up? What do you think, Pete?
Like historical ages, maybe. Like the 5 ages of history, maybe.
Yeah, I think that might have.
It was in there below you.
The Wikipedia, I think, or
Yeah.
there. Yeah, go below the history and people to ask.
There you go.
Prehistoric, classical, Middle Ages, early modern, and modern. But let's expand on that.
Yeah, let's go to the Wikipedia one. I think you're right. That's the right one.
Let's look at that. Let's see. So yeah, archaeological. No, what does it say?
Yeah, I think keep going. I think it's going to be huge. So that's all like the prehistory.
Oh, this is going really deep. General periods. Keep going.
But there you go. Bronze Age, Iron Age, Middle Age, Nuclear Age, Space Age.
There we are, right there, modern history. So Industrial Age, 1760 to 1970, 210 years. Machine Age, 1980 to 1940, or 1880 to 1945. So that was just 65 years. Then we've got the nuclear age, 1945 to 1950, says present, but obviously we've gone off that path. Space age, 1957 to present. And then information age, that's where we're getting into computers. That started in 1970. Internet, 1990, so 20 years apart. Intelligence, 2024. So look, and I think we're going to see a real shrinking of that with AI. Now we're going to see robotic age and all sorts of things, right? So this really accelerates. AI is going to accelerate the ages that we live through, where we don't have to wait for our grandkids to see the next age, or
Right.
or our great grandkids. It's going to happen in our lifetime.
Happening in our lifetime. Yeah.
We're living through it, right? We won't recognize it. It's like I was talking to Chris before the show, and he said, "Look, when is it that every restaurant is not going to have a server and we're just going to have robots serving us?"
Right.
I mean, there are restaurants that do it today, right? You check out with you scan your phone or your watch, and you pay for it, and something is making it and delivering it to you, not humans.
It's amazing.
So yeah,
Can
it's
I
going very
circle
fast.
back? Because
Yeah,
we
please
were
go.
talking about the blockchain, and you did a great job of what was my question? Is this thing this new thing, AI, cloud computing, doesn't matter, blockchain, is it solving a problem that I had?
Yeah.
You nailed one that really is solving a problem that's real. Most people, though, get infatuated by the new tech and try to find a problem for this to solve. Instead of having the problem and then finding the solution,
Right.
a lot of people took blockchain as the solution and tried to find the problem
That's
and
true.
wasted time, money,
Yeah.
craziness. Okay, so let's say you got those first two. Let's say AI. Is AI going to solve a problem that I have as a business owner, as just a regular person? At the beginning, if you listen to the hype, it was nobody will ever have a job again. Everything's going to be automated. Now, may that happen one day? Maybe. Did it happen in 2023? It did not.
Right.
And
Nope,
we're
it
not
didn't.
anywhere close. It just became a tool in the toolbox.
Yep.
Okay. So we passed that check. But then what's the next? What's the third step? Is, okay, it's going to solve a problem I have, but is it worth my effort to solve it better than the way I'm already solving it? Think of all these business problems, like we were talking about investments before, or let's talk about credit card fraud. Generative AI is amazing. It does not solve credit card fraud better than the way we're already doing it.
Yet. I mean, I
Maybe
I kind of put yet in front of everything because
Fair.
I just think it's learning so quickly. Even, where you said, hey, these thinking models now, they're taking longer to spit out an answer, but they're reasoning. I mean, I see it just in using ChatGPT. It's taking a little bit longer, but it's giving me better answers. We've got projects now where we're giving them a lot more information up front, and then it's really reasoning the answers, and we're collaborating together.
Correct.
And so that wasn't there just 3 months ago.
But let's go back to your original question: is how can a business owner or regular human know if this is the time to bring it into their business?
Yeah.
If you're not going to be able to solve a problem you have right now, you wait. That doesn't mean your yet is absolutely 100% true, like it is with everything.
Yeah.
You shouldn't always be the first adopter, right? And then, of course, that gets you to the last thing was, all right, so if this is going to solve a problem I actually have, and it's going to be worth my time, money, and attention to do it, the last thing is it worth the switching costs? So if let's say I have this problem, I'm going to use generative AI, I think, to crack the Zestimate and beat that, right? How many people on my team am I going to not have do something else to work on this project?
Yeah.
And for most business owners, it's not really developing something new. It's purchasing something and installing it that's AI. A lot of people trip over their shoelaces there too.
Yeah.
They don't think about ROI, which I know in your investment real estate world, you think about ROI falling out of bed. It's amazing how many people don't in the technology side. And they'll go spend $100,000 on some AI solution to make $10,000.
Got it. Yeah.
But if you can crack those 4 questions and answer yes, 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 it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But it would be a no-brainer for anything to retool your factory, or these frameworks that we're talking about hold up.
So let's make it really simple for somebody. If they're a business owner, what are the 4 questions they should ask themselves before they think about implementing AI in their business.
So does the AI that is being pitched to you work? Is it even real? Does it do anything? Okay, that's usually easy because seeing is believing. 2 is, do I have that problem that they're so have the solution for? Next is it worth me not doing something else? Right? Can I move my people, my labor, my money, and my attention to do that? And of course, the last question is it going to do it better than the way I was already doing it? The old joke in technology is you could have just done it in Excel.
Yeah. So if you answer yes to all 4 of those questions, then you should bring that technology into your business
as fast as you can.
Yeah.
Because you've basically proven ROI without ever putting a dollar amount on a spreadsheet. Right.
All right. But if you're a business owner and you don't use one specific AI application, what would that be that would leave you behind?
I think right now, because it's so new, I'm trying to remember one of the big investment banks. It may have been JP Morgan. Doesn't matter. They just came out with a new study, and they looked at small, medium businesses, which is a lot in this country, right? And their number of the percentage of these businesses that are using AI in any way, from the $20 ChatGPT subscription to fully automating outbound phone calling, right? And everything in between, 6%. If you
Very
listen
low.
to the news, you assume everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
They are not. So the first thing you need to do as a business owner, business leader, human, is you need to be in the game.
Yeah.
Here's a good analogy. Remember when Google first came out? Do you remember how hard it was?
Yeah.
Like it took a while to
You didn't
kind
even
of
really know how to search.
Right. It took a while to kind of get it. AI is that times 10. But what happened with Google? Now we all do it in our sleep.
Yeah.
Right. When I watch people use AI tools, including the one my company makes, I watch people struggle, not because it's hard, but because it's a change in the way you interact with the computer. And it's a big enough change that when people do their first couple attempts, it's no fun and they feel like this doesn't work. But that's not it.
Yeah.
It's if you played with ChatGPT, you kind of have to get the hang of prompting, and it's
True.
trial and error.
Yep.
And so the biggest mistake people make is just not starting.
Yeah.
You don't have to start with a $100,000 software package. You can start with the $20 ChatGPT or Anthropic Claude or Google Gemini and just use it. Even use it for the stuff you don't think you need to use it for.
Sure.
Right? Because what you'll do is you'll get proficient. I think of like my kids' age on how good they are with phones.
Yeah.
Like being able to like text without looking. That's a
Right.
silly example,
No, it's a good example.
but it's repetition and
That's
practice.
right.
Right?
Yeah, and you know what? It is evolving so quickly that because even if I think, using your example of a Google search, like back when Google came out or any of the search engines, Alta Vista, it doesn't matter what it was, right? You had to ask in different ways to try and get your answer. You're like, no, that doesn't give it to me, and it gives you results. You're like, that's not it. And you used to use like quotation marks around what was really important that you wanted to be in that search. Where today it's more like you could type a sentence or speak out loud. And the same thing's happening with ChatGPT. You can have conversational language to find out your question. You don't have to ask it a specific way. It would be the same way as me asking you something. I can ask ChatGPT, and it gives a really good answer. And then you can say, no, that's not exactly what I was thinking about. Why don't you look at it from this angle? Or I want this to be a little bit more emotional, or look at the statistical part of this, and it'll revise its answer. And so it's evolved very quickly in a very short period of time. You could jump in at any time and you're not left behind. That's the point.
And you make a great point, because what you and I just talked about is now being measured in months.
Yeah.
Like, when you have a little kid and first you say he's 7 weeks old, and then you say he's 6 months old, and eventually you say he's 20 something, I don't even care anymore, right? We're in the toddler years of this, where we're still measuring stuff in months. For folks who haven't just tried ChatGPT, or you just need to go start. And here's the perfect piece of advice, and I'm just reflecting what you just said back a different way. What do people do when they crack it open for the first time? They Google something.
Yeah.
They type in sourdough bread.
Yeah.
I make a joke when I trained just friends or even people who use my software. I'll say, imagine that Brad and I saw each other at the grocery store and it's in the bread aisle. And I walk up to Brad and I say, real estate. First, you're going to step away. Who is this insane person accosting me in the bread aisle? But the second thing you're going to say is, I have no idea what you mean.
Yeah.
You just said the word real estate. If the same thing were to happen again and I cruised up to you and I said, hey, Brad, what do you think real estate prices are going to do in the next 3 months? Still weird at the grocery store, but you have all the context you need.
Yeah.
AI models
Same
are
thing.
just like that.
Needs a context.
You said, and I think I know what you meant. You said, isn't it a cool feature of AI that you can just talk to it? I'm going to raise the stakes and say that is the correct way to work with AI models. If you don't do that, you're hobbling yourself and the AI model. The AI model needs that, I'll call it human, and it's not really, but that full language, full questions, ideas, conversation is how the AI works best. Why? It was trained on conversations through all this stuff that people fed it at the beginning to create the model. It's trained on TV shows and books and Reddit conversations. It understands conversation better than it understands sourdough bread.
Yeah. Well, that's a great answer to the question, what is it that people are doing wrong? What is it that people are doing wrong when they're using AI models like ChatGPT? That's a great answer to that.
That's it, right? So first mistake is not using it.
Yeah.
Second mistake is trying to Google it.
Yeah. Yeah. You'd be more conversational. So let's talk about your company for a minute,
Yeah,
because you
love
are
to.
doing knowledge-based AI, and I'll let you explain it. But I'd like to hear about the application of it. You know, is it in like online chat? Or you mentioned that you're also doing models where it's voice and that sort of thing. So tell us what you're doing, and then I'd like to kind of figure out how that applies to business.
Yeah. So, just back a little bit when I was running this big software shop, hundreds of developers. You have hundreds of developers. You can do some stuff, right? You can move some mountains. But when ChatGPT came out and we started thinking, all right, what of the 100,000 problems we're trying to solve every day do we try to solve with this? And it turned out that was a harder question to answer. We were talking about, does it solve a question you really have? And is it going to solve it better than the way you're already doing it? That's difficult. So I made a couple decisions. First is, I'm going to go start my own company because I think I have some interesting stuff to bring to the world that I couldn't do if I'm working for someone else. So CurrentWave AI, that's where we came from. But when I surveyed what I'll call the problem landscape, there's so many problems to solve out in the world. What are the ones that are low fruit, right? A lot of entrepreneurs in my game, probably in your game too, what do they do when they first start out? They swing for the fences. They try to get that $1 billion thing going. Well, unfortunately, I've learned the hard way, to use a sports analogy, don't try to hit a home run. Try to hit a single up the middle. Try to get a walk, right? Those are long-term, higher probability successes and way lower risk, right? So what's a better investment, Brad? I'm going to 100x my money on a stock, but I have only 1 in 100 chance of hitting, 99% chance of failing, or a 5% checking account that compounds and I have it for 20 years.
Right.
Is it even close?
Yeah.
Right. So same thing with software problems, or really almost all business problems. The less sexy it is, usually the more successful you get.
Okay.
Just is. So when I was kind of having that lens, the problem that we saw over and over again, still see over and over again, is most businesses over a couple of people have processes and procedures and policies they have to write down for their people to do their jobs. Right. So our very first customer was a bank.
Okay.
Banks have hundreds of how-tos. Someone walks up to a teller at a bank and says, I need to do an international wire transfer, but the person on the account with me just passed away. What do I need to do? The teller's not going to know that off the top of their head.
Right.
But it is written down somewhere. Now they have to find it.
Yep.
So most companies, most organizations, not just banks, everyone, first, don't write stuff down. Why? Because it's a chore.
Yep.
You want to work on your product. You want to help your customer. Yeah, you have to write this down. And especially as business owners, we tend to hoard this stuff in our head because it's painful to get out. But we can't scale our businesses if we can't teach the people we hire to do these things. So the first problem is people don't want to write it down, but then they punish themselves when they don't.
Yeah.
All right, so if you solve that, like my banking customers, they're really good at writing stuff down. And then the stuff they wrote down, because now we're talking about dozens of managers or supervisors who write these procedures down, where do they put them? Wherever. Now, when a customer walks up to that teller in the branch and says, how do I do this international wire with my deceased joint account holder? That teller goes, can you hang on for a second?
You ask somebody
and then they go tap a shoulder or go hunting.
Yep.
And we found the average hunt time, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Think of the customer experience there.
Yeah, it's a big waste of time.
Right.
Yep.
So we figured out how with AI to make that 10 minutes, 10 seconds. The bigger your organization, the more policies and processes and procedures you have, the faster that goes, the more efficient your people are, which means the more customers they can handle. Some people say, Pete, are you trying to take those jobs? And I'm like, I'm not. I just need to make the humans more efficient.
So it's like a job aid, if you will, but an easy way to access that job aid and use that AI to possibly just answer it directly or to give the information to the representative to then deliver the answer.
So we think of that as knowledge management that's customer facing or employee facing. We found so far, this is kind of surprising. It seems like as a business owner, well, I just want to cut the customer service part out and let the customer self-serve. It's not as great as you'd think.
Yeah.
Why? If the customer knew how to ask the question, they'd probably have the answer.
Yeah.
Customers don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Which is why they call for help. The employees do know if they can get to that resource quickly.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we found is the employees, when you give them this tool, can rock and roll. Right. They're smarter, and because they feel smarter, because they have access at their fingertips in a second instead of, sorry, let me go ask my boss.
Sure.
Right. That confidence flows to the customer. The customer has more confidence. Everybody's experience goes way up. And what's the risk? It's almost zero. Like, you can't fail at this, right?
Are you using this technology, or are your customers using this in their online chats?
Both.
Okay.
Right? This is the part that if you would have asked me when I started the company, I would have said, okay, is it going to be more customers have the online chat and they self-serve? Or is it more to help the employees that the customers are talking to a human? I would have thought it was going to be more chatbot.
Okay.
It's been the opposite.
Okay.
My customers have found that kind of superpowering their employees has netted them better gains. Now, it doesn't mean they don't do the chatbot, because it is easier for everybody, right? Because you deflect that customer service.
Yeah.
So have you ever heard of Javon's paradox?
No.
Okay, we're going to geek out for a
All
second.
right, what is Javon's paradox?
All right, so we were looking at the different historical ages, right? So this guy was an economist in like 1830.
You want to look it up, Chris? How do you spell Javon's?
Jevon.
Okay.
And it's Javon's paradox. And he was studying locomotives. And so at the time, I don't think that's him. He was studying locomotives, and
look up Javon's paradox.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Great.
Okay, so he was looking at, so coal at the time did two things. It heated people's homes and it drove locomotives.
Okay.
And he's like, okay, well, what's going to happen is as we make these locomotives more efficient, meaning they can go a mile on less coal, we're going to use less coal.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite happened. They used more coal. Hence Javon's paradox. Now, think of this with computing. You may have heard of Moore's Law. So Moore's Law was, Moore started Intel, and he had this idea that chip prices are going to be cut in half every 2 years. It's been 50 years and it's still true.
Yeah.
Because manufacturing processes keep getting better, materials get better. You would think if computers just keep getting cheaper and cheaper, we're going to use the same amount of information processing and just do it with fewer computers. Are we selling fewer computers? We're selling more computers. So what he found was, this Javon guy, is when the locomotives got more efficient, we didn't just have the same amount of locomotives and use less coal. We bought more locomotives and we hauled more stuff. What happened with computers? As computers got cheaper, the chips, we did more processing. Early AI, when Gen AI first came out, really the first winners were computer programmers.
Okay.
And I'm telling you, because I am one, they were
Writing language.
Yeah, writing C# code or Python code or whatever.
Yep.
And they're like, your days are numbered, man. There will be no more programmers because of AI.
Yeah.
What actually happened? We are now hiring more programmers.
Yeah.
It's just those programmers are so much more efficient. We can get so much more done that we don't hire less programmers. We hire more.
Yeah.
So take this to the customer service thing. I know this seems like locomotives to customer service, but I'm telling you, it's exactly the same way. If I go to a business owner and say, hey, I can make your customer service team 50% more efficient, their first thing is, well, I just need half as many people.
Yeah, that's great.
Opposite. What's going to happen is you're going to hire more people because they're so good. Your customers are so happy. Why wouldn't you keep doubling down on that benefit?
Right. You'll have more customers. So I'll give you a Jevons paradox.
Hit me.
I think this one will resonate. Email.
Oh my
We're
God,
going to be so much more efficient. You don't have to wait for the mail to get there. You can send mail. Somebody gets it right away. You don't waste all the time writing a letter. So what do we have with email? We're overloaded with email. It just takes all your time, right? So that's
exactly right.
Heard of that, but that's what that is. Javon's paradox. That's great. All right, I got a couple more questions for you that I think people would be interested in. So what is the biggest AI myth you wish people would simply stop believing?
My advice for someone selling their home: number 1, do it yourself and save. Number 2, use HomePie.
HomePie makes it easy to buy or sell without an agent. I can list a home in minutes and start receiving offers right away from buyers.
When we discovered that we didn't have to lose $40,000 in agent commission just to upsize to a larger home, it was an obvious choice.
List your home for free at homepie.com. Keep your piece of the pie.
That the robots are going to take over the world tomorrow.
Why?
We're so far from that. Now, you can never say never. Like you said very well, you said comma, yet. But I think people way overestimate how far we've come. We've come a long way. Like what we can do with ChatGPT is amazing. Like what kid is ever going to write his own term paper ever again, right? That's a solved problem now. Is that the same as my business is going to be taken over by our advanced cyber overlords? So no. So I still have conversations with really smart CEOs when I'm talking about my product. And my product, as we talked about, it's low fruit, basic stuff. Hey, I'm helping you look up information that you need to help your customers faster. It doesn't get more kind of boring than that. Very effective, very helpful, but boring. I've had CEOs, educated people say, but what if the AI takes over my business? And I have to like almost kind of sit back and say, you're way overestimating what you're seeing on TV, right? Way overestimating. We're still at the ChatGPT stage, still trying to get it to not lie to us about the sourdough bread recipe. Mm-hmm. It's a ways from taking over stuff.
Yeah.
Right. And so the thing to remember is, one, that's distant. Maybe not as distant as we thought 10 years ago, but it's still distant. But it's also more in our control than people, I think, want to intuitively believe. Meaning our ability as humans forever to control our technology, you have to hand it to humans. Fire should have wiped us out. Now we've harnessed it like nobody's business. Electricity is insanely dangerous. You and I have plugs in every room in our house and we're pretty much just fine, right? So we're going to get there where we're going to get all the horsepower, and my intuition and opinion is we may goof from time to time, but we're going to harness it, not unleash it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It's a pretty optimistic view.
I think if somebody has seen like there's YouTube videos of a talk, and I don't know where it was, if it was a TED Talk or whatever it is, and we could probably bring it up on YouTube, Chris, but of like the drone, and I would call those robots, the drone robots that swarm. So look up drone swarm attack on YouTube. Have you seen this? It's I think it's about a 30-minute video, but he's talking on stage. This guy's talking on stage. We'll see if we could find it here. And he's saying basically, swarm technology. Is that the guy on stage though? Go back just to try and find the guy on stage. Scroll down. Maybe a little bit more. Or maybe go back to the search and say, oh, wait, go down. That was it, I think. Yeah, there you go. There you go. You got to watch this.
Okay.
So this is, we won't watch it now, obviously, but new weapon swarm of drones with AI. If you watch this, you'll be like, we're in a lot of trouble. Okay, so some people might watch it and go, oh, this is good. We don't have to like send people to war anymore. We just send these machines. But then you start really looking at it, and they describe how they can penetrate any impervious wall by just one in front of the other, right at it,
like
until they break through
at the door.
And then the facial recognition, we're just going to kill you because you're our enemy. It finds you in a building and hunts you down, and that's it. So you start thinking about these sorts of things, and that's what keeps people up at night. It's
for sure.
Okay, so they think about robotics. Yeah, maybe it's not, the Jetsons with somebody serving you, Rosie serving you your food all the time or whatever. Maybe that's a little ways away. Maybe not that far away. There are some things out there right now that emulate that. But it's this stuff, I think, that keeps people up at night.
And that's fair. And I think what scares us as Americans is we've gotten really, really good in big warfare.
Yeah.
We have the aircraft carriers, billions of dollars. We have the stealth jets, billions of dollars. And now we're getting faced with $100 stuff that's just as scary. And now we don't have like hegemony because anybody can go buy a $200 drone and network it together.
Yeah.
And that, I'm not a warfare expert, but I think that the term is asymmetrical warfare.
Yeah.
Right? Where you can bring down Goliath as David.
Yes.
And when we're Goliath, that's terrifying.
Right. And I think that's a big thing that people think about. So if we fast forward 10 years, what will AI have completely revolutionized that we take for granted today?
I think it's going to be similar to the Industrial Revolution. Like, if you ever heard the term Luddite, like that's like a slang term for someone who hates technology. Well, that came from the Industrial Revolution. There was this group, and I can't remember what country, but somewhere in Europe, where they had brought in the first mechanical loom to make socks. And of course, all the sock knitter people lost their mind. And they were led by this guy named Ludd, and they were called Luddites. And they would go with basically axes and go whack all these machines that were taking their jobs, which you can't blame them. I get it. But what really happened over the Industrial Revolution is all the really grungy, hard physical jobs, a lot of them got replaced by machines. Now, that's terrible if you were the guy knitting socks.
Yeah.
But when we flash forward to 2025, my socks cost like $1.
Yeah.
Not 98
$40.
bucks. Right.
Yeah.
Right. So at the end of it, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see the same thing in knowledge work. Creative people are always going to be creative people.
Yeah.
AI people, if you've ever gone to ChatGPT and say, write me a song or write me a poem, and you're like, oh my God, it's so creative. It isn't. It's just doing pattern analysis of all the songs and poems it's seen up to that point.
Yeah.
Think of like, I'm a movie guy. You a movie guy?
Yep.
Okay. Like Quentin Tarantino.
Okay.
Like Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction came out. Nobody had done that before.
Completely different.
Yeah. So AI, if we went back there,
they wouldn't be able to extract that kind of unique, because it's pulling off of everything that's happened before, not having that forward thinking.
AI is just excellent at blending stuff and coming out with a milkshake, right?
Yet.
Yes, you got me.
Okay, cool. So that really ties into something that you had mentioned earlier. What is a dark factory?
Wow, right? So this is making the news in China. So China, which I think as a red-blooded American, we have to see as an adversary, right? They have gotten so good at manufacturing that they now have factories that are completely automated. And by completely automated, I mean no humans. They call them dark factories because they don't have to turn lights on. Because there's no people that need to see.
Yeah.
So think of how efficient, like for energy, if you don't have to heat and cool the place to let the little flesh sacks walk around in it.
Right.
Right.
It's so interesting.
It is.
Yeah. It's an energy saver, but is it? Because you have to run all those machines.
But now, I'm not a manufacturing guy, but I got to think if I have a factory where no one can ever call in sick, go on strike.
That's true.
Injure their arm in the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
You win.
It is a win for sure. Okay, my last question for you.
Yeah.
If AI reaches a point where it exceeds human intelligence in every way, what happens next?
Oh my gosh. So it depends who you ask. The technical term for that is AGI, Advanced General Intelligence, which is just a fancy way of saying smarter than us on everything. So we were talking about Anthropic, the guys who invented Claude. If they win the race, they're going to have this super safe, very throttled, very controlled super brain that can solve all our problems. Hey, super brain, go solve cancer, go solve global warming, go solve the Middle East problems, right? If we're unlucky and the people who get there first have no brakes on that thing, then it's scary, because who's going to put the brakes on the thing that's better at you at everything, right?
Yeah.
And there's an old joke of, oh, I just go kick the plug.
Right.
Well, if the machine, so think of, trying to think, someone said, well, nobody could invent an AGI smarter than a human. This is a kind of an old trope.
Yeah.
Like, let's pick Albert Einstein. I don't know if he's really the smartest guy ever, but he's up there. Okay. And let's say Albert Einstein invented an AI. You would say, well, it can't be any smarter than Albert Einstein. But here's the difference. Albert Einstein has one wet noodle between his ears that can only work at a speed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because we're limited by our biochemistry.
Right.
A computer, which let's say is just as smart as Einstein, can literally operate 10 million times faster. That's not an exaggeration. And you can line up chip, 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 and you can have 100 million Einsteins working at 10 million times as fast. The net result, even if it's not smarter, is insanely smarter.
Right.
And by the time you think to kick the plug, it's outthought you 37 steps ahead.
Yeah. Who's behind the good AI and who's behind the bad AI?
Again, opinion, right? I am.
This is your opinion, but
right.
Who is it?
Again, I'm going to be kind of pro-America here. I think Americans and these labs, the big labs right now, up until DeepSeek came around, there's another big lab in France called Mistral, but still Western countries that have our values. I think there's going to be a spectrum, but I think all of them want to have safe AI. And I think all of them are going to do their best to harness whatever is going to come out of this in a way that is aligned with our values as humans, right?
Yeah.
I worry about if we don't win the race, right?
Okay.
Not much different than the arms race in the 80s with nukes, right? We really wanted to be the ones to win because we knew we were going to do the right things with it, even if we're imperfect. Right.
So what's the story behind, I think Elon Musk was involved with the original kind of ChatGPT and development of that. Then he wasn't happy with the way it was going and he felt it was going in a bad direction, but then went and started something else. Tell us about that story.
So the little bit I know, Elon was an early investor in OpenAI. Okay, OpenAI, as the name goes, is we, meaning OpenAI, was going to be this lab that worked on AI problems for everybody, and it was going to be free and open. And then they killed it with ChatGPT, and like every good capitalist said, oh, by the way, that nonprofit thing, what we really meant was we're going to now keep this to ourselves because now we're going to make $1 zillion, and we are absolutely not going to share this with anybody. And in principle, Elon had a problem with that. He said, look, this is not what we signed up for. Now, Elon bought Twitter. Twitter has this enormous amount of compute, right? And he started, his AI is Grok, or XAI is his spinoff, but it's really part of that company. Grok, G-R-O-K, is now in the same conversation as Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT.
Got it.
And Elon, being Elon, is a real, free speech advocate. If you want to play around, if you go to ChatGPT and say, do something that's maybe a little edgy, it'll say, I can't. Google's has bad press for being so that way that it's like silly.
Right.
Right. It's so it has very political views. Okay. Elon's like, no, knock yourself out. I'm not going to stop you from doing anything. Now, who's going to come out ahead? What's going to end up being the better product that serves most people's needs? Don't know.
Do you use, it's Grok, G-R-O-C-K?
G-R-O-K.
Just G-R-O-K. Do you use that?
Only a little. I think the AI tools are kind of like clothes. I've gotten comfortable with Claude and ChatGPT. That's where I spend most of my day.
Got it.
But from what I hear, Grok is great.
Okay, great. It's something I didn't know. So thank you for that. Awesome. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Not that I can think of, Brad. This has been such a fun conversation just to sit and geek out about tech.
Well, if somebody wanted to reach you, they wanted to talk to you about your business, they want to get invested in this knowledge AI for their own companies, how can they reach you?
So you can find me at www.currentwave.ai. Not only do we have AI products that we help small and medium-sized businesses to handle this knowledge management problem, but I also do speaking, so I can come speak to your executive team. In the spring, I'm gonna have this whole set of going to conferences and speaking to business leaders about AI. So if you're interested in me coming to talk to your team, give me a ring. I'd be happy to talk.
That's great. Well, thanks, Pete. Appreciate you coming on today. It was very informative, and I knew that you were going to bring the heat, so thank you. All right, guys, if you enjoyed the show today and you like the things that you hear, please don't forget, share, like, subscribe. We appreciate that. It helps me. It helps the podcast. It helps me bring on good guests just like Pete today. And we'll see you next time on The Blueprint.